mission sending cannot be disconnected from the church back here in North America as well, or whatever the sending country is. I really believe, and one of the reasons I'm excited about being in this role, is that the health of the North American church lives downstream from its investment and connection to missions and in the least reached. And so, if we send a marketplace worker, they still, in order to be connected to us, they have to be sent out by their church.
The Mission Matters podcast is a partnership between 1615 and Missio Nexus, who have a shared passion to mobilize the people of God to be a part of His mission.
Well, greetings and welcome once again to the Mission Matters podcast. I am Matthew Ellison, and of course, I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Ted Esler. Ted, greetings, brother.
Greetings. How are you doing today, Matthew?
It's great to see you, brother. Hey, we have a mutual friend on the podcast today, Luke Perkins, president at Crossworld, and we're just so excited about today's conversation, Luke. Maybe before we get started, you could just share just a sketch of your journey. It's got to be short. We've got about 30 minutes total. So a sketch and how you ended up with Crossworld.
Yeah, well, first, man, what a privilege to be able to talk with both of you guys. I look forward to Ted's emails every week because I know they're going to stir the pot in my thinking, and then oftentimes that translates into further talk with our team, and then every time I'm around you, Matthew, I just feel fired up even more and want to charge the hill. So really grateful for that.
He's very inspirational.
He really is. He really is. You guys are both trophies of the Lord's grace. And so, my story, I grew up in New England, and sometimes I choke. When I left New England, there was 5 Christians before I left, and then there were 4. That's not actually true. The Lord's doing good stuff up there. But grew up in New England, went to Bible college in Columbia, South Carolina, at Columbia International University. And then along the way, got connected to Haiti on a short-term trip, like a lot of people have over the years, and started going there every year and continued to develop relationships there. Did a year-long internship after college, and that's when my heart was really pinged for the importance of theological education in that place and in terms of how the gospel is growing in that country. And so left there, went on to Dallas Seminary, and then joined Crossworld and went back to the field and served there in Haiti as a professor at a seminary in Port-au-Prince for a number of years before I was tapped to come to this role. I was, when they said, "Hey, would you move to Kansas City?" I'm thinking, man, I'm living in the Caribbean. This is kind of, but came here to Kansas City, and even though your team beat us last year, Matthew, it's been great to be here and be part of this city and part of this team. So.
In context, the Birds beat the Chiefs, just for our listeners.
And this morning I went to try to find my Chiefs hat because I wanted to wear it for you today just to encourage your heart, and I couldn't find it. So, but married to my wife, Becca, we've got 4 kids and just had a blast raising them on the field, and they are just now starting to not be upset with us for taking them off the field and moving back to the States. Even though Haiti was a really destabilized place, it was just a really rich time together as a family there.
So I know that one of the unique contributions that Crossworld brings to the table is this idea of marketplace workers and business professionals. Could you just unpack a little bit about why this kind of ministry is really strategic in our current mission context?
Yeah, well, and you guys would know better than me when you look at where the unreached are in the world. Most of those places are going to be places that are closed to traditional missionary visas, religious worker visas. There are a few places left, but in terms of getting access to those places, I mean, in my view, you look at the challenge of the unreached. Primarily, it's a challenge of access. These are people who will live their whole lives and never come into contact with a Jesus follower. And so how do we get access to those places? Marketplace ministry becomes a way to do that. That's not the only reason that we are engaged in marketplace ministry as a part of what we do here at Crossworld. Undergirding it, we would say, hey, this whole concept of the sacred secular divide that has developed over time really is problematic. And so, and then in addition to that, we would also say that that any believer can make a disciple. In fact, all believers should be disciple makers. And so why not pull all of these things together and say, man, could we leverage this to actually make a difference among the 3.4 billion unreached across the world? And so that's what we're doing, and we're sending people. Our tagline is all professions, one mission. We're sending people into a whole variety of professions, everything from farming to computer coding, but sending those people as disciple makers, planted, if you will, in the midst of a context with an identity that makes sense locally to the people around them. What's this person doing here? Well, he's working a job as a computer coder. That makes sense to me. Whereas, the guy who doesn't go to an office every day because he's there on a missionary visa, that kind of stems the gap there and helps solve that disconnect that can appear on the field. So there are a number of things coming together there. But for most of our history, and we'll turn 100 years old in 2031 as an organization. So most of our history, we were a classic church planting organization and still very much engaged in that work. But just now we've broadened up the audience to say, hey, let's leverage the whole body of Christ and get them involved in this work of reaching the unreached.
So, Luke, I often talk to marketplace workers and business leaders in the U.S., and I think they have a hard time seeing their place in kingdom work. I don't know if that's your experience as well, but
Sure.
maybe talk about that. And why is that? Why is there this disconnect?
Yeah, I mean, it would go back, I think, to the sacred secular divide and the ways that has both overtly and subtly been reinforced over the years. I was having a conversation with the chairman of our board here at Crossworld not too long ago, who himself is a business professional. He was an exec at DuPont for a number of years, and he's been discipling this guy that he works with in a professional context, and the guy was really grabbing on and stuff, and he came to him and said, "Hey, I'm thinking, man, maybe I should. Do you think I should quit and go to seminary or something like that?" And kind of like Todd Bolsinger says, if you're a good enough Christian, eventually you should go pro. And Dale said, no, don't do that. Like, sure, let's get some training, but your mission field can be right exactly in the context where you are. I realize I've just blended the word mission field there, but make disciples where you are. It could be that's exactly the context God wants you. So one of the things we like to say is pulling the 9 to 5 window and the 1040 window together is going to be a great way to help disciple believers both here and on the other side of the world.
So, not challenging the idea, but I do want to bring out a criticism that I hear.
Yeah.
And that is that marketplace missionaries typically don't do things like church planting. I mean, they may be in a business somewhere overseas.
Mm-hmm.
But could you speak to the intentionality that I know Crossworld brings to the larger mission / objective? Legend?
Yeah, and that's real. I mean, and also connected to that is the tension that if you're working a 40, 50 hour a week job, how much space is there actually to be involved in the work of disciple making? That's a tension that we sit in the middle of, and by all means have not figured that out yet. But first of all, if there's ever a disconnect between the work of disciple making and the church, that means that there's been a misunderstanding either about disciple making or in the realm of ecclesiology. Those two things have to be connected together. So I say in a lot of ways, we are still very much a church planting organization. But what we say is the best way to plant a church is to make disciples. And so, I was just with one of our workers in West Africa a couple weeks ago, and I said, okay, you're a very effective disciple maker. You've got 1 million people that you're in relationship with, and deep relationship in a lot of cases. How do you move that into the realm of church? And he said, well, I've got this one guy I check in on Mondays, another guy on Tuesday and Wednesday. And once I start to get up to 6, 8, 10 guys, then I say, all right, let's just do this together. For efficiency's sake, let's meet together. And he says, as I've done that over the years, the result in his case has been about a dozen churches that have been planted both in the country where he's currently in West Africa, and then also further north into a more Muslim dominated area. And so he's got about a dozen churches that have been planted as a result of his work. Some of those smaller, some of those larger in terms of a couple hundred, 300 that still exist today. And so any disciple making work has to either lead to the creation of a new church or to the strengthening of an existing one. And for it to be anything else means that we've misunderstood what disciple making actually is. That we do sometimes get into trouble because people will look at our website and say, okay, are you guys even pro-church? You don't say that you're a church planting organization. So what does that look like? And usually I respond with a question to say, okay, well, what do you mean by church planting? And really want to get at is what's your ecclesiology look like? And if it's an ecclesiology or a church planting strategy of saying, hey, we're going to go and gather a group of people together, and we're going to find a space where we can meet and try to maintain kind of momentum in that way so that disciple making happens as people are attracted to that. Okay. But, I would say for 200 years, that was the predominant strategy in Haiti, in the country that I served. And at the same time, after a couple hundred years of gospel influence there, you don't see the values of the kingdom making it down into the marketplace, down on the ground. And Haitian leaders tell me, this isn't Luke telling them, they say, hey, the disconnect is we haven't discipled our people. We haven't taught our leaders how to make disciples. And so we would say, yeah, those two things have to be connected together. They can't be separated.
Yeah. Luke, there was a book written by Gene Veith several years ago, Lutheran theologian, called God at Work. And it was about recapturing Luther's lost doctrine of vocation, the worship of work. And you talk about the bifurcation of secular and sacred. I'm not saying we do this well in our context, because I think we have divorced discipleship from our daily practice and identity. But can you talk about what disciple making looks like in the marketplace in your fields? I know that's very broad, but as you're training up workers, what does that actually look like in the context of a 9-to-5?
Yeah, well, we really try to have a principle-driven approach here instead of a programmatic-driven approach. And so, we teach our people, one of the things we teach them is to look at all of your relationships and all of your spheres of life, including your kids, by the way, and say, you want to be asking consistently 3 different questions of each of them. Number one, where are they now with respect to their relationship with Jesus, their discipleship process? Where are they now? What do they need next? And then how do I get it to them? And we define disciple making by saying that we're helping people to live and love like Jesus by imparting God's truth in the context of relationships wherever life happens. And so that third question there, what do they need next? There's some sort of truth there that they either need to understand or believe or obey or something like that. And so we want to put that truth in front of them in a way that they can see it. Again, the lamp that is sit on a light stand, right? In a way that they can see it. And then all the while talking, saying, Spirit, we need you to move this person to the point of faith or obedience or whatever it is. And so we're just in the context of relationships in life, we're looking for points where we can move people just a little bit closer all along the way. And so, in a context in a high rise in Tokyo, you've got a core group of people that you're working with during the 9-to-5 window. You've got, the people that you check out with at the grocery store. You've got people that you bump into on public transportation. Your circles of influence can, once you really dive into it, can actually be pretty wide. And any one of those opportunities, any one of those relationships is an opportunity for disciple-making growth. So in a high-rise in Tokyo, it looks like that. I was just with a farmer in Africa who's one of our workers there. And he's introducing some new farming technique, and he's got a group of Muslims that are working with him there. And every morning he prays with the group to Jesus. And for a while he thought, they're just writing me off. I'm going to stop for a while. And then he stopped for a while. And then he told me after about a month, they came to him and said, hey, I thought you used to pray in the mornings. How come you're not praying? And he says, okay, that's my cue. So then he started praying again, and he looked and he said the workers were sitting there. He opened his eyes for a minute. So the workers were sitting there like this while he's praying. And then when he said amen, they went like this. there's truth happening there. He's praying in Jesus' name. He's doing good work. And it just so happens that the Lord has blessed his crops and they're doing really well, even better than some of the neighbors. And so, the Spirit is in the work in all of this, and it really becomes beautiful.
I just experienced a marketplace missionary yesterday. I went to get my hair cut, and it was a walk-in, so I didn't know who I was going to have as a barber. And so this Asian woman, probably 55, 60 years old, was assigned to me. And I'm sitting here thinking about, so I got these little Bibles I give out to people that are just the four Gospels.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how can I open up the conversation here? And then she started to open it up with me. And before I was out of there, she was literally praying for me in my upcoming trip overseas. She was Indonesian, by the way. And she was telling me how the gospel came to her family in Indonesia through missionaries. And
Isn't that beautiful?
Anyway, it just was a really great little example of somebody who's a marketplace missionary working in a barbershop. So
yeah. And obviously, we want to hear the truth on Sunday morning. But also, when you hear it in a context like that, it lodges the truth in a different kind of category of life and helps the recipient understand this applies to every little piece of my existence, not just my Sunday morning when I'm gathered together with the believers. Yeah. And so I love that. That makes me think, I was with, not too long ago, with John Eckstein, who's the new director at Send. And we were talking about, man, there, if you could find a way to come alongside, you could have 100,000 Filipino missionaries tomorrow, because they're all leaving and they're going to different places across the world. Man, if you can find a way to catalyze that, ooh, that's exciting.
So true. And I'd be curious to know what's the funding model you're using at Crossworld? Are all your people just getting jobs and that's how they're funded, or do they raise money? What's the dynamic there?
Yeah, if we were open up the books and show you, you would say in a lot of ways we're still look a lot like a traditional missions agency, and we still send traditional missionaries in places that we can. But in the cases of people who are taking a job that covers their whole salary, then on our end, we would charge a flat monthly fee that we would call a community investment fee that keeps them in relationship with us. And then we invest in them with coaching resources and member care and training and all of that stuff. And most of the times that fee is covered by their sending church or a group of their sending churches. So there's still an element of support raising, which I really believe, a lot of people poo-poo the support raising model. I think there's a lot of beauty to it because it rallies a group of people around you and gets them invested. So we still have a lot of that. We have a lot of cases too where you have people who take a job that doesn't pay a market wage, and so they'll be hybrid. They'll be partially supported. And so we've got people all the way from full support all the way down to maybe they're raising $200 or $300 a month, or sometimes even just enough to cover the fee to be connected with us. But still, if we were to look at the books, the vast majority of our income in terms of coming from missionaries comes from the standard support raise model and a percentage that comes off of that.
I appreciate you talking about the sending model still being alive and well. One of the things I've heard over the years is the sending model's dying. Let's find more expedient, better ways to send, and let's raise up marketplace and, BAM workers, which I'm a champion for. I'm all for it. But there's places where that's not going to work. There are places where a traditional missionary, as you mentioned, is still the pathway to the field. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah. But I want to talk about this. So I'm thinking about a church, not one in particular. I'm making this up in my mind. And I'm wanting to do missions on the cheap here, okay? And so I'm like, marketplace workers, we don't have to send, we don't have to raise money anymore. And I'm thinking there's now a disconnect because that investment of resources brings to mind on a regular basis that worker. So how do you mobilize churches, if you will, or train churches to really value missionary care if they're not investing as much as they normally would?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, in most of the cases, they're still investing what they normally would, because if someone is a fully supported missionary, for my own support team, I think we've got maybe 7 churches on our support team, and then the rest are individuals, and that's a pretty typical case across the spectrum right now. But one thing I think is interesting that even might be underneath your point, and I know, Matthew, you've been a great champion of this, and that is that mission sending cannot be disconnected from the church back here in North America as well, or whatever the sending country is. I really believe, and one of the reasons I'm excited about being in this role is that the health of the North American church lives downstream from its investment and connection to missions and in the least reached. And so, if we send a marketplace worker, they still, in order to be connected to us, they have to be sent out by their church. They've got to be recommended by their pastor. They've got to be in good fellowship with that church. And then as issues maybe arise on the field or whatever, we're going to pull that church in. They're going to be a part of that conversation. So there has to be a connection. Financial investment is a great way to do that, and there's still that, but we want all elements of a connection, not just for the health of the worker, but for me, it really feels like a way to invest in the health of the North American church as well, to help keep her on mission.
Luke, I'm wondering if you could share with us, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here because I didn't prep you for this, but I'm wondering if you could share with us one story that would encourage us, encourage our listeners about how marketplace ministry has led to a field breakthrough or a success in field ministry.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pick one. Well, I want to go to the story of the farmer that I mentioned just a minute ago. Not that particular story, but a connected story of a different farmer. We don't only send farmers. It just happens to be on my train of thought today. But we had a story of somebody who was sent into a place. They introduced a new crop into this community. They were growing peppers. And in that particular community, they hadn't really grown peppers, or at least that variety of peppers or whatever. And so this guy started planting peppers, and the crop was really doing well. And people start buying them. People were loving them. People coming to him saying, hey, could you teach us how to plant these ourselves so we can start to have pepper crops? It really started to take hold in this town, to the point where they had this like pepper festival thing with t-shirts and stuff like that. And it all went back to this gospel worker who is out there using this access point, getting into the community, introducing something that they could really use and would be a benefit to them. But he is in a Muslim-dominated place, and he was able to say, all right, I'll teach you about my crop, but let me also teach you a little bit about me. And so, that is still, the gospel work is still in the early stages, but you're seeing people there who are starting to catch on to, this guy is unique because of this reason, and you guys would know, getting a solid kind of visible church planted in a context where the population is 95% Muslim, that's going to be a slow path, but that path has started now, and it started because of this pepper crop. When I thought of missiological strategy, I never would have thought of pepper plants, but here we are, and that's where we're at. We've got somebody else, another one, just real quick, and this is the case of somebody who's working with refugees, and there's refugees moving all over the world, and one strategy is getting into the path of where they typically flow and trying to connect with them. And so this person is in the southern coast of Europe. And she has set up a center there that's working with refugees, teaching them job skills, that kind of thing. She had this woman who came to her and said, hey, they've been building a friendship for a while. She'd been coming to the center quite a bit. She said, hey, I'm having this dream. And in my dream, I hear this line from this song, just one line, a little bit of music, never heard the song before. I don't know it. Could you help me understand? She said, beautiful. I'm humming it at the house. My mother is humming it now. So she pulls out her phone and punches in the line that the woman gave her. The song was, hallelujah, he has found me, the one my soul so long has craved. Jesus satisfies all my longings. And she's able to play it for her on YouTube. And the woman's like, that's the song. And she explained, let me tell you about who Jesus is and what the purpose of this song and what it is that it's trying to describe. To me, that's a beautiful example of God, who is passionate about reaching the least reached himself. He is more committed to this than any one of us on this screen. But also he wants to use people. He wants to get people on the field and bring those two things together. And that was his process of reaching this person. And that refugee center continues to spurn out stories like that on the regular that are really, really beautiful. And so
Amen.
I hear stories like that and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I'll keep coming to work. This is fun.
That's awesome.
So, Luke, as you look to the future, what are the most exciting, significant opportunities that you feel are before Crossworld and just marketplace ministry in a general sense? What excites you?
Yeah, man. What excites me is when you get a connection made. So you've got a job opportunity and a solid person who's really wired as a disciple maker. You get that connection made. You get them on the field. One of the things that I love about this is how that person is perceived locally. The identity totally makes sense. And maybe I'm a little hypersensitive to this because I served as a white person in a black country. And so I was used to just standing out everywhere I was. And so the missionary label was on me everywhere I was. And so I felt like I had to kind of navigate around that really carefully. But when you're in a context in a city, for example, where expats are there anyway, and you're there doing something that actually makes sense locally. Other expats do this as well, except you're there with intention to be making disciples. That just feels like such a cool, sweet spot for the Spirit to begin to work and produce a disciple who understands right from the get-go that this stuff that they're talking about influences my daily life. This is not just an activity I go to on Sunday, but this should govern how I operate, how I do business, how I price products, all of these things. You get to see the values of the kingdom start to actually flow out from that. And so I think that locally understood placement really is exciting for me.
So, Luke, how can people best connect with Crossworld? I mean, I'm sure you have a website.
Yep. Yeah, just head over to crossworld.org. So it's not crossword like the newspaper, but crossworld.org. And you can hit our site there and you can pop your name in and fill out the contact form. Of course, we're on all the social media stuff as well. But would love to engage with people there.
So what have we learned here today? I'd like to kind of think about summary here. Some of your best kingdom workers, I'm speaking to pastors, church leaders, they're hidden in plain sight. They're right there in your seats, in your pews. They are people with marketplace skills and business experience, and they could be mobilized for the sake of making disciples. Something else that hit me, I'm personally convicted. You talked about spheres of influence. And, we all live in ministry. Like we eat, drink, sleep ministry. And sometimes I don't seize those opportunities to do evangelism and outreach. And I had a sabbatical last year, and one of the things that I started to pray during my sabbatical, even and afterwards, when I wake up, God, who are you calling me to bless today? Who are you going to put in my path? Simple prayer. Who are you going to put in my path today that you want me to be a blessing to? And just this idea of lifting our eyes, looking around, Starbucks, soccer field, work, whatever. God, who are you calling me to bless today? That really hit me.
Yeah.
I think another thing that has come out in this conversation is we tend to think of these different mission strategies as so starkly different. You could pick an agency that does traditional work, or you could pick an agency that does marketplace ministry.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. You've got a whole range and a whole spread of different ministries going on just within Crossworld. And I think that's probably true of actually a lot of ministry organizations and probably also marketplace organizations that started out specifically for marketplace missions, probably also they're running mixed models as well.
Yeah.
And so we don't need to see these things as so starkly different.
Yeah. I mean, you guys know because you've been here. We share a campus here with Avant, and Avant has a ministry philosophy that's just a little bit different. And people ask me sometimes, "What's different about you guys?" I said, "What is alike about us is much more than what is different. We're still shooting for the same thing. We just have kind of different starting points." And so, I think we are more alike than we are similar. I will say though that there is some sense in the marketplace world and in the BAM world where good intentions to be about real business and real ministry sometimes have drifted over towards were just doing business. I saw that a lot in Haiti with a lot of different social enterprises that came and they ended up doing good work. Were they making disciples? Probably not, And so being aware of that tension is really important for us and trying to stay right in the middle of it.
That's great. That's I'd say I've observed similarly that attitude. I've also seen traditional-minded missionaries kind of poo-poo the potential and the impact that marketplace missions can have.
Yep.
So I call that the dumb argument. It doesn't need to be one or the other. It can be all at once, and it should be all
absolutely.
at once. So, and we see that in the scriptures. So,
Yep. That's great.
Well, thank you, Luke. Appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you, brother. It's really great to be with you. Look forward to seeing you again down the road.
Yeah, God bless, brother. Thanks.
All right, take care.
Before you go, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. The Mission Matters podcast is a partnership of 1615 and Missio Nexus. Check out 1615.org and missionexus.org for more resources on the mission of God and the matters of the mission. The Mission Matters podcast is hosted by Matthew Ellison, president of 1615, and Ted Esler, president of Missio Nexus.